Picture this. You're at a party and you notice two people across the room. One is surrounded by a crowd, laughing and engaging in lively conversation. The other stands alone, checking their phone and looking a bit lost. Which one would you be more drawn to? Chances are it's the person who seems to be the life of the party. But what is it about them that makes them so magnetic? Is it just charisma, or is there something more at play? This is a question that has puzzled philosophers and social scientists for centuries. What is it that makes someone a priority in others' lives? What qualities do they possess that make them so attractive and valuable to those around them? Well, it turns out that some of the answers can be found in the ancient wisdom of Stoicism. Stoicism is a school of philosophy that originated in ancient Greece and Rome, and it's all about living a life of virtue, purpose, and resilience. The Stoics believed that by mastering our emotions, focusing on what we can control, and cultivating a strong sense of self, we can become the best versions of ourselves and attract others to us like a magnet. But how do we apply these principles in our modern lives? How can we become the person that everyone wants to be around, the one who is always a top priority? That's exactly what we're going to explore in this video, but be warned, this isn't a quick fix or a magic formula. Becoming a priority in others' lives takes work, dedication, and a willingness to look deep within yourself. It requires you to confront your fears, challenge your assumptions, and push yourself out of your comfort zone. But the rewards are more than worth it. When you become the person that everyone wants to be around, doors open up to you that you never even knew existed. You'll build deeper, more meaningful relationships, attract exciting new opportunities, and find a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment in your life. So are you ready to take the first step on this transformative journey? Then let's dive in and discover the 10 Stoic rules that will make you everyone's top priority. Trust me, your life will never be the same. Rule 1. Master the art of self-respect. Imagine you're at a job interview. You walk in, shoulders slumped, avoiding eye contact, and apologizing for every minor misstep. Now, picture the opposite. You enter the room with your head held high, a confident smile on your face, and a firm handshake. Which candidate do you think is more likely to get the job? The answer is clear. Confidence and self-respect are magnetic qualities that draw others to us. But what does this have to do with Stoicism? Everything. The Stoics believed that self-respect is the foundation of a life well lived. As Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." In other words, when you truly know and value yourself, you carry yourself in a way that commands respect from others. But self-respect isn't about arrogance or ego. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness, compassion, and understanding that you would extend to a dear friend. It's about setting boundaries, standing up for your values, and refusing to compromise your integrity for anyone or anything. So how can you cultivate this kind of unshakable self-respect? It starts with your thoughts. The Stoics taught that our thoughts shape our reality, and that by mastering our minds, we can master our lives. That means paying attention to your inner dialogue and challenging any negative or self-defeating thoughts that arise. For example, let's say you make a mistake at work, and your first instinct is to beat yourself up over it. A Stoic approach would be to acknowledge the mistake, learn from it, and then move on. Instead of dwelling on your failures, focus on your strengths and the progress you've made. Another key aspect of self-respect is living in alignment with your values. The Stoics believed that the path to happiness and fulfillment lies in virtuous living. In other words, doing what you know is right, even when it's hard. That might mean standing up to a bully, even if it means risking rejection or conflict. Or it might mean turning down a lucrative job offer because it doesn't align with your principles. Of course, this is easier said than done. It takes courage and practice to live with integrity, especially in a world that often rewards compromise and conformity. But the more you exercise your self-respect muscle, the stronger it becomes. So start small. Set a boundary with a friend who always cancels plans at the last minute. Speak up in a meeting when you have an idea to share. Wear an outfit that makes you feel confident and powerful, even if it's not the latest trend. Remember, self-respect isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Every time you honor yourself and your values, you send a powerful message to the world and to yourself that you are worthy of respect and admiration. And here's the exciting part. As you cultivate this unshakable sense of self-respect, you'll start to notice a shift in how others perceive and treat you. People will be drawn to your confidence and authenticity. They'll seek out your opinion and value your contributions. And they'll start to see you as a top priority in their lives. But don't just take my word for it. Try it out for yourself and see what happens. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into the Stoic principle of emotional resilience and how it can help you navigate even the toughest challenges with grace and poise. Get ready to take your self-respect to the next level. Rule 2. Embrace emotional resilience. Picture this. You're driving to work, stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, when suddenly a car cuts you off. Your heart races, your blood boils, and you feel the overwhelming urge to honk your horn and shout obscenities. We've all been there, right? But what if I told you that there's a better way to respond to life's frustrations and challenges? Enter emotional resilience, the second rule in our Stoic guide to becoming everyone's top priority. The Stoics believed that our emotions are not caused by external events, but by our judgments about those events. In other words, it's not the traffic jam that makes us angry, but our thoughts about the traffic jam. As Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So how can we cultivate this kind of emotional resilience? The first step is to become aware of our thoughts and emotions as they arise. When you find yourself getting upset or frustrated, take a step back and observe your mental chatter. Are you catastrophizing the situation or assuming the worst? Are you taking things personally or blaming others for your own discomfort? Once you've identified these negative thought patterns, the next step is to challenge them. Ask yourself, is this thought really true? Is there another way to look at the situation? For example, instead of getting angry at the driver who cut you off, you might reframe the situation as an opportunity to practice patience and compassion. This doesn't mean that you should suppress your emotions or pretend to be happy all the time. The Stoics believed in the importance of acknowledging and processing our feelings in a healthy way, but they also recognized that we have a choice in how we respond to those feelings. One powerful tool for cultivating emotional resilience is the practice of negative visualization. This involves imagining worst-case scenarios and mentally preparing yourself to handle them with grace and poise. For example, you might imagine losing your job, getting dumped by your partner, or facing a serious illness. By confronting these fears head-on, you can develop a sense of perspective and inner strength. Another key aspect of emotional resilience is the ability to let go of what you can't control. The Stoics recognize that many things in life are beyond our influence, from the weather to other people's opinions of us. By focusing on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and responses, we can find a sense of peace and empowerment, even in the face of adversity. Of course, cultivating emotional resilience is a lifelong practice, not a one-time event. It requires patience, self-awareness, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone. but the payoff is immense. When you're able to stay calm and centered in the face of life's challenges, you become a rock for others to lean on. You radiate a sense of strength and stability that draws people to you like a magnet. And here's the best part. Emotional resilience is not just about weathering the storms of life. It's also about savoring the good times and finding joy in the present moment. When you're not constantly overwhelmed by negative emotions, you free up space to appreciate the beauty and wonder of the world around you. So the next time you find yourself stuck in traffic or facing a difficult conversation, remember the words of Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Take a deep breath, choose your thoughts carefully, and watch as your emotional resilience grows stronger with each passing day. But emotional resilience is just one piece of the puzzle. To truly become a priority in others' lives, we must also cultivate a deep sense of integrity and authenticity. In the next section, we'll explore how living in alignment with your values can make you a magnet for respect and admiration. Get ready to take your self-awareness to the next level. Rule 3. Live with integrity and authenticity. Have you ever met someone who just seemed to radiate a sense of purpose and conviction? Someone who stood up for what they believed in, even when it was difficult or unpopular. Chances are that person was living with integrity and authenticity, two essential qualities for becoming a priority in others' lives. But what does it mean to live with integrity? At its core, integrity is about consistency. Consistency between your words and your actions, your values and your behavior. It's about being true to yourself, even when it's hard. The Stoics believed that living with integrity was the key to a life well lived. As Seneca, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, once said, "If you don't know who you are, the world will tell you." In other words, if you're not clear about your own values and principles, you'll be at the mercy of other people's opinions and expectations. So how can you cultivate a strong sense of integrity? The first step is to get clear on your core values. What principles do you hold most dear? What qualities do you admire in others? What kind of person do you want to be remembered as? Once you've identified your values, the next step is to align your actions with those values, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. For example, if honesty is one of your core values, that means telling the truth even when it might hurt someone's feelings or get you in trouble. If compassion is important to you, that means treating everyone with kindness and respect, even when you disagree with them. Of course, living with integrity is not always easy. There will be times when you're tempted to compromise your values for the sake of popularity or success. But the Stoics believed that true happiness and fulfillment come from living in accordance with your highest principles, not from external rewards or validation. As Marcus Aurelius put it, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. This simple maxim encapsulates the essence of Stoic integrity, a commitment to doing what's right, even when it's hard. But integrity is not just about being true to your values. It's also about being true to yourself, about living authentically and unapologetically. So often in life, we put on masks and pretend to be someone we're not in order to fit in or please others. But the Stoics believed that true happiness comes from embracing your unique identity and gifts and sharing them with the world. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are they're not the ones who blend in with the crowd or follow the path of least resistance. They're the ones who stand out, who speak their truth, who live with passion and purpose. When you live with authenticity, you give others permission to do the same. You create a ripple effect of honesty and self-acceptance that can transform entire communities and cultures, and you attract people who appreciate and value you for who you really are, not just for what you can do for them. So how can you cultivate authenticity in your own life? It starts with self-awareness, with taking the time to reflect on your thoughts, feelings and desires, and honoring them without judgment. It means being willing to take risks, to speak up for what you believe in, and to pursue your dreams with courage and conviction. Remember, living with integrity and authenticity is not about being perfect. It's about being human, about acknowledging your flaws and mistakes and using them as opportunities for growth and learning. It's about staying true to yourself, even when the world tells you to be someone else. In the words of Epictetus, seek not for events to happen as you wish, but rather wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. When you live with integrity and authenticity, you create a sense of inner peace and strength that radiates outward, attracting others who are drawn to your light. And speaking of attraction, in the next section, we'll explore how setting healthy boundaries can make you even more irresistible to others. Get ready to learn the art of saying no with confidence and grace. Rule 4. Set boundaries assertively. Have you ever found yourself saying yes to things you really wanted to say no to? Maybe it was taking on an extra project at work, even though you were already overwhelmed. Or maybe it was agreeing to go out with friends, even though you were exhausted and needed some alone time. If so, you're not alone. Many of us struggle with setting boundaries, with communicating our needs and desires clearly and confidently. But the Stoics believed that healthy boundaries are essential for living a life of integrity and authenticity, and for becoming a priority in others' lives. Think about it this way. When you say yes to everything, you're essentially saying no to yourself. You're putting other people's needs and wants ahead of your own, and sacrificing your own well-being in the process. And over time, that can lead to resentment, burnout, and even ill health. But when you learn to set boundaries assertively, you send a powerful message to yourself and others. You communicate that you value your time, energy, and resources, and that you're not willing to compromise your own needs for the sake of pleasing others. So how can you cultivate the skill of setting boundaries? The first step is to get clear on what your boundaries are. What are your non-negotiables? The things you absolutely cannot or will not do? What are your priorities? The things that matter most to you and that you need to protect at all costs. Once you've identified your boundaries, the next step is to communicate them clearly and confidently. This means using I statements rather than blaming or accusing others. For example, instead of saying, "You always take advantage of me," you might say, "I feel overwhelmed when I take on too many commitments, so I need to be more selective about what I say yes to." It also means being willing to say no without apology or justification. Remember, you don't owe anyone an explanation for your boundaries. Your no is a complete sentence. Of course, setting boundaries can be uncomfortable at first, especially if you're not used to it. You might worry about disappointing others or being seen as selfish or uncooperative. But the Stoics believed that true generosity and kindness come from a place of self-care and self-respect, not from self-sacrifice and martyrdom. As Epictetus put it, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. In other words, you have the power to choose how you respond to other people's demands and expectations, and to prioritize your own needs and well-being. When you set boundaries assertively, you create a sense of safety and respect in your relationships. You teach others how to treat you, and you attract people who value your time and energy as much as you do. And here's the best part. When you learn to say no to things that don't serve you, you free up space and energy to say yes to things that do. You create more room in your life for the people, activities, and experiences that truly matter to you, So the next time someone asks you to do something that doesn't align with your values or priorities, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Take a deep breath, communicate your boundaries clearly and confidently, and watch as your relationships transform for the better. But boundaries are just one piece of the puzzle. To truly become a priority in others' lives, we must also learn to focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't. In the next section, we'll explore how this key Stoic principle can help you find inner peace and outer success. Get ready to take your life to the next level. Rule 5. Focus on what you can control. Have you ever found yourself worrying about things that are completely out of your control? Maybe it's the weather on your wedding day, or the traffic on your morning commute. Or maybe it's what other people think of you, or whether you'll get that big promotion at work. If so, you're not alone. Many of us spend a lot of time and energy fretting about things we can't change, and it can be a major source of stress and anxiety. But the Stoics believed that true happiness and success come from focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we can't. Think about it this way. There are some things in life that are completely within your power, like your thoughts, actions, and attitudes. And there are other things that are completely outside your control, like other people's behavior, natural disasters, or the stock market. When you focus on the things you can't control, you're essentially giving away your power. You're putting your happiness and well-being in the hands of external forces, rather than taking responsibility for your own life. But when you focus on what you can control, you take back that power. You become the master of your own destiny, rather than a victim of circumstance. And you free up your energy and attention to focus on the things that truly matter, like your values, goals, and relationships. So how can you cultivate this Stoic mindset? The first step is to become aware of your thoughts and beliefs. When you find yourself worrying about something outside your control, ask yourself, is this something I can actually change or influence, or am I just spinning my wheels? If the answer is no, then it's time to let it go. Acknowledge the thought or feeling, but don't dwell on it. Instead, shift your focus to something you can control, like your own attitude or actions. For example, let's say you're worried about a big presentation at work. You can't control how your boss or colleagues will react to it, but you can control how well you prepare, how confident you feel, and how you handle any feedback or criticism. Or let's say you're anxious about a first date. You can't control whether the other person likes you or not, but you can control how you show up, how authentic and engaging you are, and how you handle any awkwardness or rejection. The key is to focus on the process rather than the outcome, to put your energy and attention into the things you can actually influence, and to let go of the rest. Of course, this is easier said than done. It takes practice and patience to cultivate a Stoic mindset, especially in a world that's constantly bombarding us with messages about what we should worry about or strive for. But the payoff is immense. When you learn to focus on what you can control, you create a sense of inner peace and resilience that's unshakable. You become less reactive to external events and more proactive in creating the life you want. And here's the best part. When you radiate this kind of calm and confidence, others can't help but take notice. They see you as someone who's in control of their own life, someone who's not easily ruffled or thrown off course. In the words of Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you focus on what you can control, you become the master of your own reactions and the creator of your own destiny. So the next time you find yourself worrying about something outside your control, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Take a deep breath, let go of what you can't change, and focus on what you can. Watch as your life transforms from the inside out. But focusing on what you can control is just one piece of the Stoic puzzle. To truly become a priority in others' lives, we must also cultivate a strong sense of purpose and meaning. In the next section, we'll explore how finding your why can make you magnetic to others and to yourself. Get ready to discover your true calling. Rule 6. Cultivate a strong sense of purpose. Have you ever met someone who just seems to have it all figured out? Someone who knows exactly what they want out of life and goes after it with passion and determination. Chances are that person has a strong sense of purpose, a clear understanding of what truly matters to them and why. But what exactly is purpose, and how can we cultivate it in our own lives? According to the Stoics, purpose is about more than just setting goals or achieving success. It's about living in alignment with your deepest values and beliefs, about finding meaning and fulfillment in something bigger than yourself. Think about the people you admire most, the leaders, innovators, and changemakers who have made a real difference in the world. What do they all have in common? An unwavering commitment to a cause or vision that goes beyond their own self-interest. Whether it's fighting for social justice, advancing scientific knowledge, or creating art that inspires and uplifts others, these individuals have tapped into something greater than themselves. They've found their why, their reason for being, and it drives everything they do. So how can you find your own sense of purpose? The first step is to get clear on your core values. What principles do you hold most dear? What kind of world do you want to create or contribute to? What legacy do you want to leave behind? Once you've identified your values, the next step is to align your actions with those values. This means making choices and taking steps that are consistent with your deepest beliefs, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable. For example, let's say one of your core values is compassion. That might mean volunteering at a local shelter or advocating for policies that support the most vulnerable members of your community. Or let's say one of your values is creativity. That might mean carving out time each day to write, paint, or make music, even if it's just for yourself. The key is to focus on the process rather than the outcome. To find joy and meaning in the act of living your values, rather than just the external rewards or recognition. As Marcus Aurelius put it, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. When you cultivate a strong sense of purpose, you infuse your thoughts and actions with meaning and significance. You become more resilient in the face of challenges and setbacks, because you know that you're working towards something greater than yourself. And here's the best part. When you live with purpose, you become a magnet for others who share your values and vision. You attract people who are inspired by your commitment and integrity, people who want to support and collaborate with you in making a difference. Think about the great leaders and movements throughout history, from Martin Luther King Jr. to Malala Yousafzai to the Me Too movement. What do they all have in common? A clear sense of purpose that galvanized others to action and change. When you tap into your own sense of purpose, you become a leader in your own life and in the lives of those around you. You inspire others to find their own why and to live with greater meaning and intention. Of course, finding your purpose is not always easy. It takes introspection, experimentation, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone. It means being honest with yourself about what truly matters to you, even if it goes against the expectations or norms of others. But the rewards are immeasurable. When you live with purpose, you wake up each day with a sense of excitement and possibility. You know that you're not just going through the motions, but actively creating a life that aligns with your deepest values and aspirations. In the words of Seneca, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. When you cultivate a strong sense of purpose, you find a richness and abundance that goes beyond material wealth or success. You tap into a wellspring of meaning and fulfillment that can sustain you through even the toughest challenges and setbacks. So the next time you find yourself feeling lost or adrift, remember the words of Epictetus. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Take some time to reflect on your values and beliefs, on what truly matters to you. Then start taking small, consistent steps to align your life with that purpose. Watch as your world expands and your impact grows. But purpose is just one piece of the Stoic puzzle. To truly become a priority in others' lives, we must also commit to continuous learning and growth. In the next section, we'll explore how investing in your own development can make you a valuable asset to yourself and others. Get ready to embrace the power of lifelong learning. Rule 7. Invest in personal growth and knowledge. In today's fast-paced, ever-changing world, it's easy to feel like we're constantly playing catch-up. New technologies, skills, and ideas are emerging at a breakneck pace, and it can be overwhelming to try to keep up. But the Stoics believed that one of the keys to a fulfilling and successful life is a commitment to continuous learning and growth. Think about it this way. When you invest in your own development, you're not just acquiring new knowledge or skills. You're expanding your capacity to think, create, and contribute to the world around you. You're becoming a more valuable asset, not just to yourself, but to everyone you interact with. As Seneca put it, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. The Stoics believed that learning is a lifelong process, one that doesn't end when we finish school or achieve a certain level of success. It's an ongoing journey of discovery, curiosity, and growth. So how can you cultivate a commitment to personal growth and knowledge? The first step is to identify your areas of interest and passion. What topics or skills do you find most fascinating or rewarding? What kind of knowledge or expertise do you want to develop? Once you've identified your areas of focus, the next step is to seek out opportunities for learning and growth. This might mean taking a class or workshop, reading books or articles on your chosen topic, or seeking out mentors or experts who can guide and support you. But personal growth isn't just about acquiring new information or skills. It's also about developing your character and mindset, about becoming the best version of yourself. The Stoics believed that true wisdom comes from self-reflection and self-awareness. By examining our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors, we can identify areas for improvement and growth. We can cultivate virtues like courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom, virtues that not only benefit ourselves, but also those around us. For example, let's say you want to become a better listener. This might involve practicing active listening techniques, like paraphrasing what the other person has said or asking clarifying questions. But it also involves developing empathy and patience, the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes and to give them your full attention and respect. Or let's say you want to become more resilient in the face of challenges and setbacks. This might involve developing a growth mindset, the belief that your abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and practice. But it also involves cultivating self-compassion and self-care, the ability to be kind and supportive to yourself, even when things don't go as planned. The key is to approach personal growth and knowledge as a holistic process, one that involves not just your intellect, but also your emotions, values, and relationships. When you invest in your own development, you become a more well-rounded, adaptable, and valuable person. Someone who can navigate the complexities of life with skill and grace. And here's the best part. When you radiate this kind of growth and wisdom, others can't help but take notice. They see you as someone who is constantly evolving and improving, someone who is not content to rest on their laurels, but who is always striving to learn and grow. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you invest in your own growth and knowledge, you take back that power. You become the master of your own destiny, the creator of your own success and fulfillment. So the next time you find yourself feeling stuck or stagnant, remember the words of Epictetus. The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. Surround yourself with people and resources that inspire and challenge you to grow. Embrace the discomfort and uncertainty that comes with learning and change. Watch as your life unfolds in new and exciting ways. But personal growth is just one piece of the Stoic puzzle. To truly become a priority in others' lives, we must also cultivate a deep sense of empathy and understanding. In the next section, we'll explore how putting yourself in others' shoes can make you a more compelling and attractive presence. Get ready to expand your circle of compassion. Rule 8. Practice empathy and understanding. Have you ever found yourself in a heated argument with someone, only to realize later that you were both saying the same thing in different ways? Or have you ever judged someone harshly, only to learn more about their story and feel a sense of compassion and understanding? If so, you've experienced the power of empathy, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and see the world from their perspective. And according to the Stoics, empathy is not just a nice-to-have skill, but a crucial component of a fulfilling and successful life. Think about it this way. When you practice empathy, you're not just building better relationships with others. You're also expanding your own understanding of the world, your ability to see beyond your own limited experiences and beliefs. As Marcus Aurelius put it, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? By putting ourselves in others' shoes, we can develop a more compassionate and nuanced view of the world, one that recognizes the common humanity in all of us. So how can you cultivate empathy in your own life? The first step is to practice active listening, to give others your full attention and seek to understand their perspective, even if you disagree with it. This means setting aside your own agenda and opinions, at least temporarily, and focusing on the other person's experience. It means asking open-ended questions like, "Can you tell me more about that?" Or, "How did that make you feel?" It means resisting the urge to interrupt, judge, or give advice, and instead simply holding space for the other person to express themselves fully. But empathy isn't just about listening. It's also about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, imagining what it might be like to walk in their footsteps, to face their challenges and triumphs. One way to do this is through perspective-taking exercises. For example, you might try to imagine what it would be like to live in a different country or to grow up in a different family or culture. You might read books or watch movies that expose you to different ways of life, or seek out conversations with people who have different backgrounds and experiences than your own. The key is to approach these exercises with a spirit of curiosity and openness, to let go of your assumptions and preconceptions, and to be willing to have your worldview challenged and expanded. Of course, empathy isn't always easy. It can be uncomfortable to confront our own biases and blind spots, or to sit with the pain and suffering of others. But the Stoics believed that this discomfort is a necessary part of growth and wisdom. As Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." By practicing empathy, we can break free from the prison of our own limited perspective and connect with the shared humanity that binds us all. And here's the best part. When you radiate empathy and understanding, others can't help but be drawn to you. They see you as someone who is not just intelligent and successful, but also kind and compassionate. Someone who can relate to their struggles and triumphs, and who can offer support and guidance when needed. In the words of Epictetus, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. When you practice empathy, you become a better listener, not just to others, but also to yourself. You develop a deeper understanding of your own thoughts, feelings, and motivations, and a greater capacity for self-awareness and self-compassion. So the next time you find yourself in a difficult conversation or relationship, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? Take a step back, put yourself in the other person's shoes, and seek to understand their perspective. Watch as your relationships deepen and your wisdom grows. But empathy is just one piece of the Stoic puzzle. To truly become a priority in others' lives, we must also learn to communicate with clarity and confidence. In the next section, we'll explore how mastering the art of communication can make you a more compelling and influential presence. Get ready to find your voice and speak your truth. Rule 9. Communicate with clarity and confidence. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where you felt like you were speaking a different language than the other person? Or have you ever left a meeting feeling like you didn't get your point across, or that your ideas were misunderstood or ignored? If so, you're not alone. Communication is a skill that many of us struggle with, whether we're trying to express ourselves to a partner, a colleague, or a room full of strangers. But according to the Stoics, communication is not just a nice-to-have skill, but a crucial component of a fulfilling and successful life. Think about it this way. When you communicate with clarity and confidence, you're not just getting your point across. You're also building trust and credibility with others, showing them that you are someone who knows what you're talking about and who can be relied upon to deliver results. As Epictetus put it, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. By communicating with clarity and confidence, we open ourselves up to new ideas and perspectives, and we invite others to do the same. So how can you cultivate this skill in your own life? The first step is to know your audience, to understand who you are speaking to and what their needs, interests, and motivations are. This means doing your homework before a conversation or presentation, researching the topic at hand, anticipating questions or objections that might come up, and tailoring your message to the specific needs and goals of your audience. It also means being aware of your own communication style, your tone, body language, and choice of words. Are you speaking in a way that is clear, concise, and easy to understand? Are you using jargon or technical terms that might be confusing to others? Are you projecting confidence and authority, or are you coming across as uncertain or apologetic? The key is to strike a balance between being authentic and being effective, to communicate in a way that feels true to yourself, but that also resonates with your audience and achieves your desired outcome. Of course, communication isn't just about speaking. It's also about listening, about being open to feedback, questions, and ideas from others. The Stoics believed that true wisdom comes from a willingness to learn from others, to seek out different perspectives and experiences, and to be humble enough to admit when we are wrong or don't know something. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." By being open to feedback and new ideas, we can continue to grow and evolve throughout our lives, and we can build stronger, more meaningful relationships with others. But communication isn't just about the words we use. It's also about the energy and presence we bring to our interactions. The Stoics believed that our thoughts and beliefs shape our reality, that the way we perceive the world can either limit us or empower us. By cultivating a mindset of clarity, confidence, and curiosity, we can show up more fully in our conversations and relationships, and we can inspire others to do the same. For example, let's say you're preparing for a job interview. Instead of focusing on your nerves or your doubts, try to cultivate a sense of calm and self-assurance. Remind yourself of your strengths and accomplishments and visualize yourself communicating with ease and authority. Or let's say you're having a difficult conversation with a friend or family member. Instead of getting defensive or shutting down, try to approach the conversation with a spirit of empathy and understanding. Listen actively to what the other person is saying and express your own thoughts and feelings with clarity and respect. The key is to approach communication as a practice, as something that we can continually work on and improve throughout our lives. By being intentional about the way we communicate, we can build stronger, more authentic relationships with others, and we can become more effective leaders, collaborators, and friends. As Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." By embracing the challenges and opportunities of communication, we can develop a stronger, more resilient sense of self, and we can make a positive impact on the world around us. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation or presentation, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Take a deep breath. Focus on your message and your audience, and communicate with clarity and confidence. Watch as your words and ideas take on a new power and resonance. But communication is just one piece of the Stoic puzzle. To truly become a priority in others' lives, we must also learn to embrace our own uniqueness and authenticity. In the next section, we'll explore how being true to yourself can make you a more compelling and attractive presence. Get ready to let your true colors shine. Rule 10. Embrace your uniqueness. In a world that often values conformity and fitting in, it can be tempting to try to be someone you're not, to hide your quirks, your passions, and your true self in order to be accepted or admired by others. But according to the Stoics, this is a recipe for unhappiness and dissatisfaction. Think about it this way. When you try to be someone you're not just denying your own authenticity, you're also robbing the world of the unique gifts and perspectives that only you can offer. As Seneca wrote, "What is to give light must endure burning." By embracing your own uniqueness, you open yourself up to the possibility of shining brightly in the world, of making a positive impact on others, and of living a life that is truly fulfilling and meaningful. So how can you cultivate a sense of authenticity in your own life? The first step is to get to know yourself, to understand your own values, passions, and strengths, and to be honest about your own limitations and areas for growth. This means taking time for self-reflection and introspection, journaling, meditating, or simply sitting with your own thoughts and feelings. It means being curious about your own inner world and being willing to explore the parts of yourself that you may have been taught to hide or suppress. It also means being willing to take risks, to put yourself out there, even when it feels scary or uncomfortable. Whether it's sharing your art or music with the world, speaking up about a cause you believe in, or simply being honest about your own struggles and vulnerabilities, embracing your uniqueness requires a certain level of courage and vulnerability. But the rewards are immeasurable. When you are true to yourself, you attract others who appreciate and value you for who you are, not just for what you can do for them or for how well you fit into a certain mold. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." By embracing your own uniqueness, you give yourself permission to think and live in a way that is authentic and fulfilling, and you inspire others to do the same. Of course, embracing your uniqueness doesn't mean that you have to be perfect or that you have to have everything figured out. The Stoics believed that true wisdom comes from a willingness to learn and grow throughout our lives, to be open to new ideas and experiences, and to be humble enough to admit when we are wrong or don't know something. As Epictetus put it, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." By embracing our own uniqueness, we open ourselves up to the possibility of growth and transformation, of becoming the best version of ourselves, even if that means being misunderstood or judged by others along the way. And here's the best part. When you radiate authenticity and self-acceptance, others can't help but be drawn to you. They see you as someone who is comfortable in your own skin, someone who knows who you are and who isn't afraid to show it. Think about the people you admire most in your life. Chances are they are the ones who are unapologetically themselves, who have a sense of purpose and passion, and who aren't afraid to stand out from the crowd. By embracing your own uniqueness, you become one of those people, a beacon of authenticity and inspiration for others. You give others permission to be themselves and to pursue their own dreams and passions with courage and conviction. Of course, embracing your uniqueness doesn't mean that you have to go it alone. The Stoics believed that we are all part of a greater whole, that we are interconnected with each other and with the world around us. By building strong, authentic relationships with others, whether it's with friends, family, or colleagues, we can create a sense of belonging and support that allows us to thrive as individuals. We can learn from each other, challenge each other, and inspire each other to be our best selves. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We are all fellow citizens of one world. By embracing our own uniqueness, we contribute to the richness and diversity of that world, and we help to create a more just, compassionate, and fulfilling society for all." So the next time you find yourself trying to fit in or be someone you're not, remember the words of Seneca, "What is to give light must endure burning." Take a deep breath, connect with your own inner truth, and let your unique light shine. Watch as the world around you begins to glow with the radiance of your authenticity. And so we come to the end of our journey through the 10 Stoic rules for becoming a priority in others' lives. From mastering the art of self-respect, to cultivating empathy and communication skills, to embracing our own uniqueness and authenticity, these principles offer a powerful roadmap for living a life of purpose, meaning, and connection. But as with any journey, the destination is not the only thing that matters. It's the process of growth and self-discovery that happens along the way. The challenges we face, the lessons we learn, and the relationships we build. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew that true happiness and fulfillment come not from external validation or material success, but from the quality of our own thoughts and actions, from the way we show up in the world, and the impact we have on those around us. By cultivating a strong sense of self, a commitment to personal growth and knowledge, and a deep appreciation for the unique gifts and perspectives of others, we can become the kind of people that others naturally prioritize and value, not because of what we can do for them, but because of who we are and how we make them feel. Of course, this is not always easy. It requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones. It means being honest with ourselves and others, even when it's uncomfortable or scary. But the rewards are immeasurable. When we live in alignment with our own values and authenticity, we create a sense of inner peace and fulfillment that radiates outward, attracting others who share our passions and purpose, and inspiring them to live more fully and authentically themselves. As Epictetus wrote, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." By focusing on our own growth and development, and by cultivating gratitude for the people and experiences that enrich our lives, we can find joy and meaning in every moment, even in the face of adversity or setbacks. So as you go forth from here, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Embrace your own power and potential, and trust in the journey of self-discovery and growth that lies ahead. And know that you are not alone. You are part of a greater whole, a community of seekers and learners, all striving to live with purpose and authenticity. By supporting and inspiring each other, we can create a world that is more just, compassionate, and fulfilling for all. As Seneca wrote, "We are all in the same boat upon a stormy sea. We owe to each other a terrible and tragic loyalty. Let us honor that loyalty by living with courage, integrity, and compassion, and by lifting each other up along the way." Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you go forth with wisdom, resilience, and grace, and may you always remember the incredible power and potential that lies within you.